I read a story online the other day and it was said to be true, so I wanted to share it with you. An American Airlines flight was traveling across the country from New York to Los Angeles. However, in the middle of the flight, they had to make this unexpected stop for some mechanical reasons. Once they got the plane on the ground, the passengers were then told that if they liked, they could get off the plane for a couple of hours, but they needed to listen carefully for their new boarding call. So everybody gets off of the plane except for this one gentleman who was blind. As the pilot was getting off, he noticed the man just sitting there and he saw his seeing eye dog lying quietly underneath the seats in front of him. So the pilot approached the guy and he said, "Sir, we're in Sacramento and we may be here for an hour or so. Would you like to get off and stretch your legs?" The blind man replied, "No thanks, but maybe my dog would. He may need to use the restroom." So all the people in the gate area come to a complete standstill when they look up and they see their pilot walk off the plane being led by a seeing eye dog. And what makes matters even worse is that the pilot was wearing sunglasses. All the passengers from the flight were completely freaked out. They're scrambling, they're trying to change planes, even airlines, and it took a while before the airline staff was able to explain the situation. Now, I love pets, especially dogs. However, most of them in my neighborhood, they're not that bright. All they do is eat and poop, and then eat their own poop. And when they're not doing that, they're chasing the tires of a car. When I was a kid, in my neighborhood, we had this dog. It was a true mutt, you know the kind. They would chase the school bus every afternoon. He'd run right alongside it, chasing the tires as they went round and round, barking up a storm, and I can't tell you how many times the dog got nipped by the tires. He'd get hit, most of the time run off squealing, and then he'd just do it all over again. There are some really dumb dogs in this world, but not seeing eye dogs. I mean, they fascinate me. Here's a dog, an animal responsible for the well-being of a human life. To me, it's nothing short of a miracle. How do they do it? How do they train a seeing eye dog? How do they create this trusting partnership between a dog and a human? I've always wanted to know, so I did a little bit of research. The newborn puppy spends the first few months of its life with a foster family. It's an important part of the family's job to nurture the puppy so that it feels secure and loved. This is where the initial trust is built, and during this time the dog also begins some of its basic training. You know, like sit and stay and, hey, don't poop over here. After the puppy has matured just a little bit, it enters into a more intensive and specific training. Trainers then must teach the dog to deny its own instincts. Instincts to hunt, instincts to sniff, instincts to chase, and for some dogs, instincts to hump every object in sight. The trainers expose the dogs to birds, to squirrels, to cats, to restaurant smells, and other dogs. They present situations where the dog must learn restraint. The dog is always praised and rewarded anytime it does something right. One of the most difficult things to teach the dogs is what the trainers call intelligent disobedience. And this is where the dogs must learn to refuse a command if it leads into some danger. For example, the dog needs to know if the owner gives a forward command and they're trying to cross the street but there's some traffic coming, the dog needs to know to not do that. But here's the really cool thing. The most difficult thing for trainers to teach a seeing eye dog is how to interpret overhead clearance. See, suppose the dog is just walking down the sidewalk. He's proudly doing a great job, he's leading this master, but he fails to see this awning hanging low overhead, then bam! The blind guy just crashes right into it. You see, the dog's orientation is primarily from a person's waist. It's down here, you know? See, the dog is only about this tall, but it's got to learn to see from way up here. It must learn to see from the master's perspective. See, when I read that it must learn to see from the master's perspective, my spirit inside of me just jumped. That's it. That's the message of the Bible right there, that we must learn to see from the master's perspective. Many of our difficulties stem from our perspective. We're so used to looking around the way things are down here, and we don't see what God is really trying to do or where God is calling us. We're such creatures of habit, and we tend to interpret the things around us, the circumstances around us, through our own lens. We can only see what's right in front of us, what's surrounding us, what's hovering over us. But all the while, God is calling us out. Just take a look from my point of view. Let me show you how I see things. Hebrews 12, 2 through 3 says this. It says, "Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Here's the key idea. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. There's a grave danger when we take our eyes off of him and we allow our focus to shift on our problems that are around us. See, sometimes I know our problems can seem to grow into unconquerable giants. Maybe it's a financial difficulty. Maybe it's a relationship issue. Maybe it's a health issue. See, we become so contentious and we stop growing when we lose sight of where we're headed and where God has called us to be. So let me encourage you today, whatever the circumstance, don't look at it from down here. Instead, allow God to show you what it looks like from his perspective. As the kids sing in children's church, he's got the whole world in his hands. He's big enough. He can handle it. Just trust him. Today, just remember, it's a matter of perspective.